In the last hands-on, you implemented some basic CRUD operations. The goal of this next lesson is to walk you through the runtime of some of these basic CRUD operations and understand which variables are in scope and their value in each step of the execution. Let's start with the create operation. When you arrive to the edit screen to create a new contact, an empty form is displayed. The first and most important thing you need to remember is that every widget, in this case the edit record widget, has a variable that will store the end user typed values. When the user types in the values and clicks save, the variable will hold the end user typed values and the screen action executes. In the screen action, the create or update entity action receives the edit record variable as its input parameter and creates a new row in the database. Let's review this pattern in Service Studio. Let's open the edit screen. In it, you have the form, the edit record widget, and the save button. You've set the destination of the save button to be the save screen action. In the eSpace tree, you have your screen action inside the contact edit screen. Let's open it. As we've just discussed, the create or update entity action uses the edit records variable as its source input parameter. Let's open the expression editor to take a closer look at the scope. In the scope tree, under the widgets folder, you have the edit record. If you expand it, you can see the edit records variable, which is, as expected, a record with the contact entity as its entity record definition. Finally, notice the expression you'll be using as input parameter. It's the contact record as a whole. Well, that's it for now. Let's move on. What characterizes the update pattern is that the screen receives an input parameter, in this case called contact ID. The screen preparation runs first. In it, you implemented a query to retrieve the contact you want to update. This query has an input parameter that is bound to the screen's input parameter. The query executes, the record is retrieved from the database and is now available as the output parameter of the query. The preparation is complete, so it is time to render the screen. The source of the edit record is bound to the output of the query. With this, the edit records variable will assume a copy. Let me emphasize this. The edit records variable is a copy, not a reference of the query's output. And, as such, the form is pre-filled with the values contained in the database. The screen is now sent to the browser and the user can edit the form. The variable of the edit record widget has a copy of the retrieved value from the database. Let's assume you changed the phone number and pressed save. The variable of the edit record widget retains the updated value and the screen action executes. This part is pretty similar to what you've seen in the create pattern. The edit record variable is used as the input parameter of the create or update action and the database row is updated. Let's review this pattern in Service Studio. In the hands-on exercise, you placed a button in your contact show screen to edit a contact. This button links to the contact edit screen, providing an input parameter that identifies the contact being edited. Let's expand contact edit. Notice the input parameter definition and move on to the screen preparation. Here you have a query. Notice that the screen input parameter, the identifier of your contact, is also the input parameter of the query. Now to the screen. Select the edit record and notice the property source record. It's set to the output of the query. This next part is very similar to what you've seen in the create pattern. The save button redirects to the save screen action, and in that action the edit records variable is used as the input parameter for the create or update action. But I would like to get your attention for one huge detail. Let's open the expression editor. You can see the output of the query in scope, and naturally, there's also the edit records variable in scope. You could be tempted to think that both were applicable as the input parameter for the create or update action. Well, it isn't so. The edit records variable is a copy of the query's output, not a reference. Therefore, only the edit records variable is updated with the user's type values. The query's output remains unchanged. In this next pattern, we'll talk about the list screen. The first thing to run is the screen's preparation. Here, there's a query to retrieve the list of contacts to be displayed. The query executes, the records are retrieved from the database, and are now available as the output parameter of the query. When the preparation ends, the screen is rendered. You've bound the source record list of the table records widget to the output of the query. By doing this, the table records variable will hold a copy of it. Again, let me emphasize this. A copy, not a reference of the query's output. Let's take a closer look at this. The focus here will be on the current property in the table records and how it applies to the table records widget. As with the edit record widget, the table records widget also has a variable. In the table records case, it's called a list. This variable contains a copy of the record list provided through the source record list property. In the expressions inside the table records, you can see a reference to a special property, tablerecords.list.current. When the screen is being rendered inside a table records row, this property assumes the record that is feeding the current row. This means that any expression inside the row that refers tablerecords.list.current will evaluate to the record feeding the first row. And the same thing for the second row, and the same thing for the third row, and so forth. Please contact us with questions or feedback to training@outsystems.com. Thank you for watching.